What's up, guys? Dominic again here today. I'm going to be talking about why communism can never succeed. Now, Lenin describes communism in a four-stage process. You have capitalism, which is the problem. And then the working class attacks capitalism in what they call the transitionary period. And then from here, once the infrastructure of the capitalist nations or the bourgeoisie has been destroyed by the proletariat, then you can usher in the next phase of communism, which is lower communism, where there is no state, there is no money. And then from there, you can go on to higher communism, where it's just an even higher degree of no state and low bureaucracy. So where communism gets stuck every single time is in the transitionary period. Now, it sounds nice to have a stateless and moneyless society, and it's something that I would agree with. However, the problem with communism is that it doesn't attack the right problem. It assumes that the problem is external to the individual, and they assume that the problem is entirely materialistic. And by doing this, they adopt the same ways of the bourgeoisie to destroy them. And so they are planting these seeds rooted in the old ways to establish a new system which they want to be stateless and moneyless. But all the state is a monopoly on violence that people assume is okay. So if you're going to transition from a stateless society using the very same violence that the state uses, you are only going to breed another state. And this is why just about every communist civilization, certainly the big ones, have never made it out of the transitionary period. It's because they are planting seeds that are grown from the bloodshed of the struggle between the working class, which they say is exerting its will over the bourgeoisie or the capitalists who run everything. So, in order to truly destroy the bourgeoisie, destroying their machinery, destroying their infrastructure is not enough. We have to purge our minds on the individual level in order to truly do away with the poison that the capitalist nations have brought us all up with. We've all been conditioned, most of us, to accept consumerism at the expense of other nations. That's certainly the capitalist way, and at the expense of ourselves. But true growth does not come from just materialistic gains. The communism and Marxism ideas come from Hegelianism. And Marx thinks that he is doing a service to Hegel and philosophy in general by removing the spiritual component of his work. Now, I do not agree with Hegel's work, but Hegel, at the very least, still acknowledges what he calls the Geist, which is the universal mind, which basically is the engine of history. It's the thing that makes humans go and do things in the world. And to Hegel, the universe was fundamentally broken. There's a problem inherent in the universe. The universe is actively combating this problem and reacting to these problems to form a synthesis. And to Hegel, all of history has basically been a problem, a reaction, and a synthesis, which in the end they think will eventually lead to some sort of grand utopian civilization born about by this struggle. Now, I think that this is personally nonsense, but he is right in the sense that it's not just human forces at play, and it's not just materialism at play. If we want to truly make a better society, Hegel at the very least understood that we have to clean our minds. It's not just enough to clean the machinery of the world. We have to recognize the false beliefs that power the machinery, that we're powering ourselves. The machines are powered by the people. So to simply destroy the machines that the people have been so conditioned to accept and revolve around their lives immediately during a transition period is never going to work. And as I stated, because they have accepted violence into their hearts to make this transitionary period a possibility, it's only going to breed a system of violence immediately afterwards. As the Satanic Temple, the second tenet states, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. This basically means that the struggle is never ending, just like the transition period of communism. It is the never-ending transitionary period because the collective has decided that their work is the most important thing instead of the individuals within the collective and the way they live their lives. Instead, they've been convinced that if they as the workers can unite and liberate themselves from the bourgeoisie, then they can create a stateless and cashless or moneyless society. But the problem is that only the individual knows what is best for themselves in life. The collective does not know what is best for the individual in their life. The collective can understand when the individual is preventing the collective from expressing themselves in a way that is more prevalent than if they weren't there. For example, the whole purpose of Marxism is to get rid of the bourgeoisie, who does exactly that. They interfere with the proletariat's ability to live their lives. So the proletariat recognizes that we need to get rid of them. But they don't get rid of the thoughts that the bourgeoisie has programmed into them. And for this reason, all Marxism is a false, hermetic, alchemical process. Hegel, for example, was deeply inspired by Hermeticism, and essentially what these people want is they want alchemical gold without doing any of the spiritual work that Hermeticism or Hegel were talking about. And from here, all you're going to get is short-sighted chaos, where the collective thinks that their physical labor is all that matters, and controlling the physical labor is what matters, while at the same time oppressing the individual who might not want to be part of the collective or might not have their will represented by the collective, because each individual is their own person and the collective can never ever represent the individual. So it is a false alchemical process because Hegel describes the problem reaction synthesis is just basically a hermetic alchemical process. You have matter that you want to turn into gold, and the gold is the synthesis. It's just a matter of how do you turn it into gold. Well, the false sorcerers and the false magicians, they'll get attached to the material aspect of that gold, all the while ignoring the true gold within your aura, your AU gold, Ra, as in light ray, your inner golden light. This is what needs to come out. It has nothing to do with the physical process. But what Marxism has done is it's taken this physical process and it's applied it to the collective and the state. And it says, if we can just get rid of the states, which is turning everything into lead, we can have gold for ourselves. But they don't recognize that the state does not exist externally to them. It exists within their minds, because that's what the word government ultimately means. It means mind control and I point this out in my previous video, it comes from gubernare mens, which means to control or pilot the mind. So these people are ultimately looking for a synthesis of civilization, where they think that because they control the labor, or if they think if the workers, the collective controls the labor, that they will have liberation as an individual. Well, they will have liberation, because liberation and liberty does not mean what most people think. All it truly means is that you have a collective group of body, which in this case is basically the collective group of workers. It's like a big workers' union, who is granting you as an individual privileges that the collective approves of to live within the space that the collective owns. And by doing this, no individual is truly living the life that they know what is best for themselves. They're always conforming to the will of the collective. Really, it is a form of black magic, because it has convinced people that by simply accepting materialistic gains is going to produce some sort of great spiritual utopia. And in reality, it's no different from what the capitalists do with their fractional reserve banking system. The fractional reserve banking system, as outlined in modern money mechanics, basically states that money is only valuable because people believe in it. It's the trust that when you take that dollar or whatever money you have, your Federal Reserve note, and you take it to a store and you exchange it for a service or a product, that you know for a fact that that store is going to accept the dollar and take it. But what does the dollar actually add in terms of value to your life and the store's? Not nearly as much value as the people who are giving you the dollar. It might make things more convenient, but it sacrificed the authenticity of human experience in exchange for a note that can be created out of thin air. And the fractional reserve banking system, just like Marxism, is a false form of alchemy, where you have basically convinced people that talismanic pieces of paper, which are printed on a whim, are worth their entire lives. So Marxism is stuck in the transitionary period perpetually. It can never get out of the transitionary period. You're never going to come to lower communism or higher communism unless you perform the alchemical process within your own mind. Because the collective is made up of individuals. The collective basically, their will is shaped by the will of the individuals. It's not that the will of the individual is shaped by the collective. To an extent, it is. But more so, it's the individual shaping the collective, because it's actually individuals who make up the collective. It's not the collective which is made of individuals. In a sense, it is, but the individuals come first. And that's what's important. And that's what Marxism rejects, or seems to just forget. We have to respect the rights and the sovereignty of each individual. Because as long as we're just going out there and using the same methods of the bourgeoisie to destroy them, we're only going to create the bourgeoisie right after that. Except now, we just accept them a little bit more. But it won't be long until people come along and say, are these people really serving me? And the answer will be a resounding no. Even if they aren't saying it or thinking it, their subconscious and unconscious minds will be. So what does a proper transition look like? Well, there's still going to be suffering. There's still going to be, maybe bloodshed, but it doesn't have to be violence in the sense that we're actively attacking people and destroying things. As I stated, the machines of civilization are powered by individuals. And all that really needs to happen is if individuals divert their attention away from the machines that run civilization, the machines will slowly starve. It won't happen immediately because the machines have been empowered a whole lot. And as we see today, there's a whole lot of automation and AI and robots, which could potentially do a lot of the work that humans do. Although from what I've seen personally, in my experience working a blue collar job, I'm not sure that AI can take all of the jobs. I think it's going to be a little while. It probably will happen, but I think we still have more time than the corporations and the capitalists will have us believe, because at the end of the day, these machines are just a product for them to sell to us, the public. So what does the proper transition look like? It looks like establishing self-sufficient homesteads. Demonstrating that we do not need the government or their machines to live our lives. It's not about destroying the machines, it's about learning to live without them. And this is something communism doesn't seem to address. It might, but I don't really see it really doing that, because it's always typically arguing for violent revolution. At the same time, the government has standards. They have a social contract. Even if they're absolute liars and their social contract revolves around keeping everyone else dependent on them, they still have rules which are like an illusion of freedom. And if we can hold the government accountable to the rules that it sets itself, like, for example, the state constitutions, the federal constitution, if we held the state accountable to those rules, while at the same time establishing self-sufficient homesteads, then the state would be forced to, number one, re-examine themselves, and number two, they're not going to have as much time to mess around with the people who are establishing homesteads, because their bureaucratic machine is being clogged. It's not enough to do one or the other. You need to have both of these types of people in place. Not everyone needs to live off-grid, right? You're perfectly fine living in the city. But if you do want to make a difference living in the city, maybe call up your local representative or attorney general and ask them, how are they making sure that the government is being held accountable to their own standards? And at the same time, education is very important. And the communists know this one. They know education is important. But they don't teach people how to think. They teach people how to be dependent on the labor that the collective provides them. Because they don't want self-sufficient individuals. They want a huge labor union that they could take advantage of. Because that's ultimately what it's about. Because like I say, it's the never-ending transitionary period. And the people who are promoting it and the people who are essentially within the institutions of power during the transitionary period will never give it up. Ever. They will never give up that power. Doesn't matter how much they say they are, no matter how much they say they're working towards lower communism or higher communism like Lenin wanted. If you form a bureaucratic machine born in bloodshed, that's what you're going to have. So people have to be taught how to think. And I lay this out. It's things like liberal arts, teaching children how to think for themselves and what they want to do in life for themselves. Not what the collective wants for them, not what the collective expects from them, but what they actually want for themselves in life. This is not what we're teaching. We basically have, in the United States, for example, the Prussian model mixed with outcome-based education, which is just basically outcome-based education system, comes from the Soviet Union, and it's just the state is determining the curriculum for the classroom, and the Prussian model is just a form of education designed to make people conform to the rules of authority. So the authority set the standard, and schools designed to teach kids to conform to authority. Well, what are you going to have with that? You're going to have a nation of obedient workers, of a strong collective to work for you, which is exactly what communism is really all about. It's not about forming lower communism or higher communism. It's about convincing people that if they just work hard enough according to what the institution says who arranged them, that they'll have that moneyless and stateless society, instead of actually teaching them how to be self-sufficient individuals so that they can actually make that a reality for themselves. And that's my video for today, guys. That's why communism will never work. It is literally the never-ending transitionary period. The struggle for justice, ongoing and forever,